And get this program started. I hope everyone's had a great morning so far. I know it's a little early, but we have an amazing program for y'all today. We're gonna go ahead and get you guys started with JHU Kranti. They are a South Asian a cappella team from Johns Hopkins University, and I'm gonna go ahead and just kick it over. Enjoy.
Thank you, Samita, for the lovely introduction. Hello, everyone. I'm Trisha Bakala. I'm president of JHU Kranti, and we thank you for the opportunity to present our set in the context of your summit, Dream and Ambition. We're so honored to be performing here. First, because we believe South Asian fusion a cappella is definitionally a method of uplifting Indian voices. As Indian American students, our medium allows us to present the culture we were born into and the culture we come from as one. Today we're presenting for you Beke Ali, sung by Sachet Tandon, with Happier Than Ever by Billie Eilish, a custom arrangement that together represents resilience and the ability to rise again after failure, whether that be in love or in life.
बेख्याली में भी तेरा ही ख्याल आए, क्यों बिछड़ना है जरूरी ये सवाल आए। तेरी नजदीकियों की खुशी बेहिसाब थी, हिस्से में फासले भी तेरे बेमिसाल आए।
When I'm away from you, I'm happier than ever. Wish I could explain it better. I wish it wasn't true.
मैं जो तुझसे दूर हूँ, क्यों दूर मैं रहूँ, तेरा गुरूर हूँ। तू फासला मिटा, तू ख्वाब सा मिला, क्यों ख्वाब तोड़ दूँ।
I don't relate to you, no. I never treat me this shitty. You made me hate this city. I don't talk shit about you on the internet. Never told anyone anything bad. That shit's embarrassing. You were my everything. All that you did was make me really sad. Don't waste the time I don't have. Don't try to make me feel bad. I could talk about every time that you showed up on time. I'd have an empty line 'cause you never did. You ruined everything good. Always said you were misunderstood. Made all my moments your own. Wish you would leave me
आज़माले रूठता नहीं, फासलों से हौसलाए टूटता नहीं ना है वो बेवफा और ना मैं हूँ बेवफा वो मेरी आदतों की तरह छूटता नहीं.
All right, how about another round of applause for that? It's unbelievable. Let's just say when I was that age, I was not capable of anything like that. So the generations are getting better as we go on in our journey. Good morning, everybody. My name is Raj Goyal, and I'm very honored and thrilled to be welcoming you here today. I know we're a little bit behind schedule, so we'll get to this incredible first panel that we have. But I do want to thank Kranti from Johns Hopkins again for that incredible performance, and really welcome you here to what promises to be one of the most exciting days really in the history of Indian America and the Indian American experience in America, if you think about that. I'm the co-founder of Impact, if we could please have a very enthusiastic round of applause for Deepak Raj, my co-founder of Impact. You'll hear from him later today and at the gala, but you know, when Deepak and I started Impact and had this crazy idea years ago to say that we should actually have the temerity that the Indian American community should take our politics and our public service as seriously as we take everything else that we do phenomenally well in this community. We don't need to recount the number of incredible business success that we have, many who are in this room, in technology and medicine and in the arts. And so that's why we and the team, and I should also make sure we have an incredible staff, but if we could also have a round of applause for Neil Makija, our executive director, who's incredible. You see, in true Indian American fashion, he's very ambitious. He's getting married in a week. So all he thought it was pretty casual to throw this summit, the largest Indian American gathering in American history, and have a huge Desi wedding in Philadelphia. So good job, Neil, on that one. The theme of this summit is Dream with Ambition. And if you look at these breakouts and if you look at the content that we have today, you'll see Desi leaders just doing this incredible work on all this array of issues, from global climate crisis to misinformation to voting rights. And all of it has this overarching theme, which is exactly this core mission that we had from day one, which Impact will never waver from, which is to build political power for our community, not in a transactional way, but to make sure that we are represented, because as that famous line goes, if you're not at the table, you're on the table. Is that the line? On the menu? Thank you, Raja. I did wake up at 4 in the morning. I apologize for that. But we have an incredible array of speakers today. And just to give you a little bit of context, I don't know if it's audacity or more probably like ignorance, to get elected in 2006, which I believe now feels like 17 eons ago, where I was at age 30 or 31. I had worked here in Washington for John Podesta at the Center for American Progress. And I went out to Wichita, Kansas. That's a rectangular state in the center of this country. You typically fly over it when you're going places, but of course I'm proud that we have such representation from all over today. And I've told this story many times, but I sort of had the fancy degrees. I had gone to Harvard Law School with Raja. I had thought I knew politics. I was fairly well informed on the issues. And then I got out to Wichita and had this notion. I was a sort of protege of Kathleen Sebelius of Podesta. And I got out there and I realized I didn't know a damn thing about how to actually represent voters, how to get elected. I realized that the most important thing I did in that election was know how to put dog treats in my right pocket, because when you're knocking 10,000 doors, the dogs will get you. So you got to learn. And I grew up Desi guy. We didn't have dogs around, so that was the whole learning process for me. I had to ask for contributions. I thought I understood that. I didn't realize really how that worked. Now I've raised $1 million checks, but I remember when a $50 check was a very big deal. And so in 2006 cycle, I believe we had 4 of us who were elected in state legislatures in the country. We now have 4 members of Congress right here. Give them a round of applause. All right. And by the way, these members of Congress, you know, I say this with respect to our august institution, they're not casual backbencher members of Congress. These are leaders who are extraordinarily respected within their party, within their jurisdictions, and within this country, and they all are going places. I don't think any of them are content at where they are now, and of course, our country needs them. Aside from Congress, it's very important, and one of the big missions of Impact is to not be obsessed with Washington. And so it is unbelievable that we have the Vice President of the United States, that goes without saying. We have these members of Congress, but we are electing people up and down the ballot. And so we have later today Jay Chowdhury, who's the first Indian American state legislator in North Carolina. We have Keisha Ram, the first ever South Asian state senator in Vermont and a future congresswoman who's here. We have Nikhil Saval, the first South Asian elected to the Pennsylvania State Senate, and Bushra Amiwala from the Skokie Board of Education, who's the youngest elected Muslim woman in America. And so give them a round of applause, please. You know, for me personally, I get sort of the warm and fuzzies when I think about people at the local level. We have judges here from Texas. We've got people, as I said, up and down the ballot who all they want to do is serve their community, and they're starting in the best possible way. You know, in the early parts of the community when I first started, we did have some folks who sort of jumped in and thought, hey, I'm going to run for president. I'm going to run for these big offices without really putting in that spade work, without really putting in that time. And now it's so extraordinarily fruitful and inspiring to see our community become so mature politically, and to be honest, we're just getting started. Deepak and I were just chatting about this. Our big first inaugural summit was 2018, where we had several great speakers. Then we had a great one in 19. Of course, we hit COVID. We had a transformational gift to the organization in 2020. We have many of our anchor donors here. Of course, Deepak is the anchor donor, which we will forever be grateful for. And you know, he took a chance on a crazy guy like me pitching this idea and put some hard-earned money out there to actually make it happen. But now, as we say in the tech world, the flywheel is spinning, and now the organization is stable with a staff of 8, I believe it is, Neil, with a stable budget of multi-million dollars. And look at this crowd that we have today at 9 in the morning here at the Willard. So I just wanted to say, from sort of the co-founder perspective, we couldn't be more excited to have you here. We have our first ever gala tonight. I hope that we can retain most of you for tonight. We've got a lot of folks who aren't here this morning who are coming here tonight. And so thank you again for your support of Impact, for being here. And without further ado, let me get the show on the road. So I'd like to introduce the moderator for this incredible panel, who's one of my personal heroes, Signa Soor, who is the founder and CEO of the Juggernaut. And this is such a cool company. For those of you, again, in the tech world, it's a Y Combinator company. It's a venture-backed company, and it tells smart South Asian stories. So if you ever thought about how it is so unbelievable how we've come as a community, we now have venture-backed media companies run by female entrepreneurs who are incredibly smart about how and nuanced about how we tell the story of our community. And yeah, she went to Harvard Business School and graduated from Yale, but that's kind of table stakes at this point, right, folks? What we're really talking about is the work that they do and the things they do for our community. So Snigna, the floor is yours, and to our members of Congress, thank you for being here, and thank you all for being here. Take care.
Thanks so much, Raj, for that introduction, and so great to be here. I get the honor of introducing our wonderful representatives. So before I begin, Representative Pramila Jayapal couldn't make it. She tested positive for COVID, and she really wanted to be here, so I just need to share her regrets. But I've told the others, they're gonna punch it up, so they're here to represent her as well. So before I begin, so without further ado, here are our wonderful panelists. First, U.S. Representative Ro Khanna, who represents California 17. Congressman Ro Khanna has served the heart of Silicon Valley in the U.S. House since 2016. Representative Khanna works hard to ensure our nation is focused on creating new tech jobs across the country, particularly for communities left behind. He sits on the House Agriculture, Armed Services, and Oversight and Reform Committees. He is also the Democratic Vice Chair of the House Caucus on India and Indian Americans. Welcome, Congressman Ro Khanna. Next, we have Representative Raja Krishnamurthy. Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy represents the 8th District of Illinois, which includes Chicago's west and northwest suburbs, a strong advocate for job creation and global vaccine equity. Representative Krishnamurthy serves on the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, the Select Subcommittee on the Coronavirus Crisis, and the Committee on Oversight and Reform. Welcome. And this person is definitely last, but definitely not the least. He's apparently the most tenured person in Congress among us. So Representative Ami Bera, representing California 7, first elected to the US House in 2012. I know some of us might have been very, very young at that point. Congressman Ami Bera is the longest serving Indian American member of Congress. Representative Bera is a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee and a senior member on the House Committee on Science, Space, and Technology. He's also a doctor, so, you know. So I just wanted, before I even begin, I just want to talk and echo some of the sentiments that Raj has spoken about. So first of all, what a historic moment. I don't think when any of us were younger, we would have ever imagined that we're sitting in a country where 4 of the representatives in Congress are South Asian American and specifically Indian American. And on top of that, the vice president is Black and Indian. So I first want to say a huge round of applause to the world we live in right now. And we're just getting started, right? So, okay, so the first question that I have to ask is, this summit is named Dream with Ambition. Does anybody know where that phrase comes from? Anybody? Okay, that's cheating. That's cheating. You guys are in Congress. Okay, anybody else? Okay, Raja Krishnamurthy, since you are the class expert here, do you want to? He's a smart one. Tell the audience where Dream with Ambition comes from.
I think that was in Kamala Harris's inaugural speech, right?
Exactly. Okay. So you got this. 10 points for Gryffindor. So dream with ambition, lead with conviction, and see yourselves in a way that others might not simply because they've never seen it before. That's what Vice President Kamala Harris said. So I want to ask each member sitting in front of me today, what does dream with ambition mean to you?
Well, first of all, thank you, Singha. It's an honor to be here. Wonderful. Raj Goyal was a trailblazer. Thank you, Raj, for your leadership. Deepak Raj, thank you for your vision. Neil, you've just done an extraordinary job, and really an honor to be here with Raja and Ami, Pramila. You know, one of the things people often ask me is, do all of you Indian Americans get along? And we do. We do. You know, and you know, there have been a lot of times where we help each other, and there's really not been much conflict in the time I've been in Congress, and it's a real strength, and I really value Raja and Ami as friends. I think dream with ambition to me means you have to take risks. You know, I lost twice. I ran against an incumbent. I know we have 2 folks here who are running for Congress, Acacia and Victoria Virasing. And, you know, I remember when I ran against an incumbent in my own party in 2004, I'd enter the room and everyone else would run away. And, you know, it's easy to support people once we've won. It's much harder to support people before they've won. And I think what dream with ambition means is that it takes risk, it takes conceiving of things that may not seem possible, and it means supporting people so that we have more than 4 members of Congress early, knowing they may lose, knowing they may have to do it a few times, and really being bold about that and encouraging people to take non-conventional paths.
Well, I think, you know, I agree with everything that Rose said. I think we dream with ambition, and since it's 9 a.m., we wake up with ambition. And that means you take action. And so I actually ran twice before I won. And I remember the first time I walked into I walked into a room in Chicago, and I introduced myself. Hi, I said, my name is Raja Krishnamurthy. And the person looked right back at me and said, Roger Christian Murphy. Very nice to meet you. And they said, I didn't know the Irish made it to India. And so that, you know, it's you know, when you have that ambition, it really behind the ambition is like the why me and why now, and why are we in this? And I think everyone on this stage and everyone in the audience is in public service or aspires to for the right reasons. And before I forget, I just want to say a special thank you to Raj Goyal and Deepak and Neil. Raj Goyal was my law school classmate, and we used to talk about these things in law school. And now here we are actually, you know, using that ambition and transforming it into action. Deepak is just one of the finest people you're ever going to meet. And then Neil, you know, I asked Neil, he said to me, I'm getting married in 10 days. And I said, but didn't you take your honeymoon in May? And then he said, oh yeah, we had the plans, we couldn't change it. And I said, that's so desi. That's awesome. The last point is I just want to say thank you to all of you for investing in the three of us and others who are running, because you know, you're doing it for the right reasons. You don't know what's going to happen. As one time I said to a group of VC people something like, look, you guys, you invest in a lot of bad companies all the time. Just send a few $100s my way. And they did, and here we are. So thank you for everything. Thank you for everything that you do as well.
And I'll just play off both Ro and Raj's comments. I think how I would sum up what Ro said is, don't be afraid. Like, put yourself out there. You never know what's going to happen. And you know, for all of us with the shared experience, you know, growing up in the households that we did, blending the culture from India, but also blending the American dream, you know, that's what it's all about. I mean, we've all been pushed to achieve, so don't be afraid. I think we all ran and lost the first time we ran, but we learned a lot. And you know, Raja said, why me and why now? I'd actually change that to why not me and why not now? And I look at the next generation that's coming up. You know, when I first ran in 2010, you know, it was hard to find organizations in the Indian American world or the South Asian world to help us. Raj was out on the campaign trail running for Congress along with Manan Trivedi and a few others. So in a short decade, we're starting to build infrastructure, we're starting to build organizations. You're seeing, as Raj pointed out, the number of folks that are getting elected to local office. We've got attorney generals, we've got state legislators, we've got the mayor of Cincinnati. It's happening, and I think it's all happening, you know, in a natural progression with you know, the generation that's rising. And you know, I'll give a shout out to Indian American women. I think they're going to make this mark, right? They're going to take it and move it forward, and I think that's a good thing as the father of a daughter. So I just, you know, when I got elected, you know, one of my first speeches, I was the only Indian American member of Congress, and said, look, over this next decade, let's go from one South Asian to 5 South Asians. It didn't take us a decade. You know, in 2016, you know, Raja Rowan Pramila got elected along with Senator Harris at that time. So it took us 4 years to go from 1 to 5. You know, there's no reason we can't go from 5 to 10 or 15 in this next decade. I don't think it'll take us a decade, though.
One thing that's been really interesting to see in all of your backgrounds is that many of you all did the kind of model minority myth thing first, like becoming doctors and lawyers before becoming, you know, before joining public service. As South Asian Americans and Indian Americans, how have your backgrounds, not just your ethnicities and cultures, but also your backgrounds as doctors, lawyers, and people working in tech and corporate world, influenced and impacted your work in Congress? How has that lens changed what you prioritize and what you choose to work on?
I'm going to start on this. Yeah. So I'm a good South Asian kid. I went to medical school first. After which my mom and dad's like, okay, you can do whatever you want to do now. You know, it really, yeah. When I had never run for office before, and you know, got involved in President Obama's campaign early on in 2007, and you know, when he got elected, I knew he was going to work on healthcare, and it's like, yeah, I could sit on the sidelines, or I could try to get in the game, and you know, that's, you know, so that influenced why I chose to run, because you know, healthcare I knew he was going to work on healthcare. How my background's influenced what I do in Congress, though, is I couldn't get on any of the select healthcare committees, so I figured where could I have impact? And when I first got elected, I got more coverage in India than I did out here, which is what led me to the Foreign Affairs Committee and led me to get on the subcommittee on Asia and the Pacific, because I figured I could work on U.S.-India policies and use the bully pulpit that I had. Today, I'm chair of the subcommittee on Asia, the Pacific, and Central Asia, so have huge impact in congressional policy as we look at Asia, and certainly as we look at India. You know, we can have a whole conversation about what's going on in India now, but I think the U.S.-India relationship and how we use that to move forward is hugely important. And I recognize I got a bully pulpit as an Indian American member of Congress who also chairs the subcommittee, so can have direct conversations with the Indian government.
Anybody else want to comment, or we can move on?
Sure. Yeah, I kind of had a little bit of a Desi experience growing up, where my father said to me in high school, he said, "Raja, you can do anything you want to do in life." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yes. You can be a civil engineer, mechanical engineer, electrical engineer, computer engineer, or a doctor." And I ended up getting a BS in mechanical engineering. Of course, a lot of people accuse me of practicing the BS part now, but you know, I ended up getting a mechanical engineering degree, and then I got a law degree, practiced for a while, and then you know, did stints in the public and private sector before being elected in 2016. I guess my background informs some of the work I do, some of the causes that I pursue. So immigration. I was born in India, and I feel a very special kinship to all immigrants, but especially children of immigrants, whether they're dreamers or the children of H-1B workers. So I am pursuing legislation with regard to H-1B, as well as documented dreamers, but also all. I think I'm an original co-sponsor on every single immigration issue in Congress at this point. I also ended up, when my parents hit the economic skids in the recession of 1973, which is when we first got here, we were allowed to move into public housing and food stamps. So I'm a child of public relief. So all public relief programs, to me, are an essential ladder for people who might fall down and need to get up. And so I am passionately advocating that we not chip away at that social safety net. And then, you know, finally, you know, just like all of you, you know, or a lot of you, I'm a racial, religious, and ethnic minority, and I have 29 letters in my name. And so I hate, like all of the three people on this stage. So I am constantly trying to do whatever I can on that front. And now I'm going to be pitching both of you pretty soon, but we're going to put a bill forward, a resolution against the replacement theory. And we can talk about that later. But that affects every single person in this audience, because it's real, and it's motivating hate, and it's motivating violence, including what happened in Buffalo.
I certainly will support that, and I appreciate, Raja, your leadership. One of the things, because you brought up hate, that I wanted to mention is, I don't know how many people saw this video that's been circulating about this kid, Sean Prithami, in Copel Middle School, and I you know, was going to talk to you and Ami about it, but it's outrageous. Basically, he gets choked by this school and almost could have gotten paralyzed or died. And then the school punishes him instead of the kid who is actually choking him. And from what I read, it turns out that the father of the kid who choked him was running for the school board and connected to that school. So when you say, why does representation matter, these are the types of incidents where it matters. Because there are many times that Raja or Ami or Pramila would lead something, and then you, instead of just having one member of Congress, have four. If they had 8 of them, you know, people can't have impunity to bully what happened to Sean in Texas. Totally unconscionable. I'll just say my background, parents were a little bit different. Even though my father was an engineer, my grandfather spent 4 years in jail during Gandhi's independence movement and was part of the first parliament in India. So my parents were always encouraging of public service, of getting involved. And I guess the one thing I would say is, don't become cynical about politics. Don't be embarrassed. I'm always amazed young people, they're almost timid to say they're interested in running for office or politics. It's an amazing, amazing calling. Anytime you step into the Congress, you're helping shape the most powerful nation in the world, and you're shaping the direction of the nation and the world, and people should be proud of getting involved in the American political process.
Can I add something? Because I'm going to have to, unfortunately, step off. Part of having four of us is that we can divide and conquer, and you'll see a number of South Asian, Indian American kids on the Hill this week because they're documented dreamers, and we've got a press conference really raising the stakes and hopefully passing our bill to protect these documented dreamers. But that's advocacy, right? These kids are fighting for their future, and they're up on the Hill, they're talking to members of Congress, and that didn't happen when I was their age. I was an intern when I was 20 here on Capitol Hill. I didn't see anyone who looked like me on the Hill. Fast forward to today, we've all have South Asian, Indian American staff. You've got 4 members of Congress, you've got chiefs of staff. So, and you've got all these documented dreamers knocking on doors and telling their story. So thank you for the support that you give us. We're going to divide and conquer. You guys hold the fort down here. I'm going to go up to the Hill, and we're going to get this bill passed. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Ami. So as Ami walks out, we are actually going to talk about a lot of key issues, and one of the issues on the docket is immigration. So I'd love a show of hands. How many of us are immigrants? Yeah, that's a lot. So, more than 1 million people, largely of Indian descent, are stuck in the green card backlog with no foreseeable path to citizenship. In addition, upwards of 200,000 children of these long-term visa holders, some of them are in the room, will age out of their dependent visa status at age 21. There's also dreamers. And many people don't know this, but Indian Americans are also the second largest group of illegal immigrants in the US. And no one really talks about that. So I'd love to ask this panel, and I know we just lost Ami, but hopefully he'll hear some of the answers as he walks out. How can the US address its convoluted and sometimes arduous immigration policies? What's the path forward there?
Oh, yeah, sure. So I'll first talk about the bill that I have co-led with some others to basically end the per-country quota or cap that really, yeah, you should clap. It's a disaster. So basically, if you are an Indian national and you come to this country on an H-1B and you were to apply for a green card today, it would take you 80 years, 80 years, to get a green card. Now, that's absolutely unacceptable, but even the past delays have been unacceptable. And I found this out because I was at a meeting in Springfield, Illinois, which is the capital of Illinois, and I talked about this issue, H-1Bs, and my bill, and this person in the audience said to me, Raja, I have a question. And I said, what is it? He said, his name was Dr. Patel. And Dr. Patel said, I'm an H-1B holder. And I said, I don't understand. You've been here like 14 years, and you're one of the most distinguished nephrologists in town. You have your own practice and so forth. But he said, no, I have 14 more years to go. And I said, okay, well, I will do everything I can to pass my bill, which will end the per-country quota, and then it will allow you to matriculate a lot faster. But I don't know when that's going to happen, so what's your plan B? And he told me, well, my plan B is that young girl there. She's 4 years old, and she was born in Springfield. She's my daughter, and in 14 years, she's going to sponsor me for a green card. And that is just completely unacceptable, but that's the story for so many of our H-1B holders. I was very close to getting this passed through the Senate. It's passed through the House a couple times, but it got held up by a couple Republican senators who believe that this is a good, they don't want to be seen passing an immigration piece of immigration reform right now because it's bad politics for them. So it's good for them to hold on to this. And that is the problem that we have, even on excellent pieces of bill with a lot of bipartisan support now, where immigration has become a four-letter word in the other caucus. We have a documented Dreamer bill as well, which is for the children of H-1B dependents. And that one has also got a lot of bipartisan support, but it's not moving because of this intransigence. So that is the central issue that we need to work on, which is everyone in this room, if you know Republican senators especially, we need to get 10 of them. And we need to call it for a vote in the Senate, and that will really kind of move things along at this point.
Roger's really led, and I'm proud to be a co-sponsor of his bill to end the visa backlog. I mean, it makes no sense economically because being on H-1B visa for a long time has a depressive effect on American wages because the American labor market then is competing against someone who has less mobility. If you put someone on a green card, they have more mobility, it will drive up wages. So actually, the policy currently is hurting American workers. And you're also creating a situation where people are in this country, but they have no incentive, or their families have no incentive to embrace the American narrative, to embrace American history, to embrace American citizenship. So you're actually creating a community of others where you want to be creating a community of patriots. Our challenge is that there's a lot of fear right now on immigrants. The fear fundamentally is, bluntly, I often joke, are we going to play baseball or cricket in America? Are we going to what's going to happen to American culture? And I think the challenge of the immigrant community is to remind people that we tend to be, immigrants and kids of immigrants, the most patriotic Americans in the entire nation, because people came to America by choice. Millions of people still want to come to America. I know my parents thought they still think this is the greatest nation in the world. How many people here think that America is the greatest nation? You know, it's a lot. You know, we have to talk about that more. We have to convince people that this is not a threat to patriotism. It's not a threat to America. It's enhancing America's ability to lead in the 21st century.
Thank you for those answers, and I think that a lot of people are very interested in what happens with immigration policy in the U.S. Okay, next hot topic issue, the economy. So, you know, right now we're in a critical period in the U.S. economy. There's rising inflation, higher interest rates to tamp down the inflation, and a falling stock market as a result. So how do you think the country should be navigating the situation, and what is the role of government in situations like these?
Well, the inflation is being caused primarily because we offshored so much of our production. We're not producing enough in America. We have too much money chasing too few goods. And, millions of jobs were offshored to China, millions of jobs went to Mexico. And you now have a situation where we can't make baby formula enough in this country. We can't make new batteries in this country. We're not making the steel in this country. We need the government to partner with the private sector to have massive production. And there are certain things I've recommended the administration bluntly needs to be more aggressive. I mean, why aren't we buying the baby formula from Europe and then subsidizing it into the American markets? I heard Secretary Buttigieg say, well, the government doesn't make baby formulas. Yeah, but the government can incentivize and provide loans and assistance to produce this. In World War II, it took 4 months for us to go from making 3,000 planes to 50,000 planes. You're telling me we can't solve the baby formula crisis in this country? It's a lack of boldness, a lack of enough imagination. We should be having the government buy on the global markets wheat and food and milk at subsidized prices, and then selling them back to the American public. We did this actually in World War II, and President Reagan did it in the early 80s. So I think we have to have a more robust, vigorous role for government to stimulate production and to take measures that will bring price stability.
So I don't disagree with anything Rose said. I'll just add a couple points. One is, right now we have this huge bipartisan infrastructure deal that got signed into law back in November. And I think it's critical that we direct the investments to unwind some of the bottlenecks in the logistics that exist either at ports or inland ports with railroad junctions. Chicago, which I represent, the Chicago area, has 6 Class 1 railroads through that area. And I can tell you, it's a huge bottleneck right now for much of the freight that traverses the country. So that's one thing. The second thing is, so I chair the House Oversight Subcommittee on Economic and Consumer Policy, and there's definitely inflation going on. There's certainly more demand than supply across the board in so many goods, but in certain areas where there's tremendous market concentration, there's also predatory pricing going on. I'll just give you one example. In meat processing, there are 4 companies that control 90% of meat processing. And while their input costs did rise, for sure, their net profits went up by 500% over the course of 2 years. And so we have to obviously make sure that there's not anti-competitive behavior going on under the cover of inflation, while at the same time addressing the underlying issue. The final point I just wanted to mention, along with long-term issues that Ami mentioned, is our labor force participation rate by women is at a low. I think 1.5 million women have dropped out of the labor force since the start of the pandemic. And one of the biggest issues that I hear over and over again from my constituents, I'm sure you are affected as well, is the lack of childcare. Lack of childcare. And this is an easy one that we should, in Washington, D.C., help with, which unfortunately has gotten stuck in politics. And if we could do something which, for instance, European countries do, which is really partner and help subsidize the cost of childcare, which is so expensive in most states, it will help to incentivize, especially single moms, but working parents, to come back into the workforce. And if we can do that, that will help immeasurably with creating those goods and services that we need to tame inflation, certainly over the medium and long term.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think that's been top of mind for so many people. And it's always interesting how the economy becomes a bipartisan kind of like partisanal issue instead of kind of approaching it with economics. Okay, next hot button topic, abortion rights. We have to talk about this. And unfortunately, we don't have Pramila Jayapal here with us, but you both will be able to speak about this as well. If you haven't been keeping track, but I know everyone has, a leaked memo from the Supreme Court showed that some members of the Supreme Court are likely to overturn Roe v. Wade, which guaranteed at federal level, the right to an abortion. And if that goes away, that has become a very dangerous issue for many, many people in terms of reproductive rights. So I'd love to hear from both of you. The Senate even stopped a bill that would help kind of, bolster that. What's happening? Why is this happening now? And what can we do? Because this is clearly not just a political issue. This is also a health issue. This is also a choice issue for women.
I think there's palpable anger and outrage around the country and certainly in Congress among the Democratic side that people's rights are being taken away. I can't remember another time in my life where a right is being taken away. I mean, we've had moments where we haven't granted rights based on equality, but this is actually moving backwards. It's moving the country backwards 50 years because of an ideology and a conservative movement that has fundamentally rejected the principle of equality between men and women. I mean, that's really what I think Roe versus Wade is about, that a woman has an equal right to her body and to her reproductive rights and making those decisions with her doctor as opposed to being told what to do. My concern, bluntly, is I saw the results of Pennsylvania last night, the elections, and the Republican turnout is up 63% from 2010 primary, and compared to 2010, the Democratic turnout was up 17%. I'm saying, how are we not getting out and voting? How are we not mobilizing? I mean, the anger, the tweets, all of that is fine, but ultimately, the only way to codify Roe versus Wade, to protect Roe versus Wade, to prevent the Republicans from getting the House and the Senate and passing a ban on abortion nationwide. I mean, don't be content if you're in California or Illinois and think we're safe, because the Republicans, if they get the control, could pass. I mean, McConnell has said it's on the table. The only way to do it is to mobilize, and I'm concerned that people haven't gotten that message yet, that the stakes of this election.
Speaking of the elephant in the womb, I think that this is, first of all, I want to just talk about Premila for one moment, because she actually testified in front of the committee on which I sit, the Oversight Committee, very eloquently about her own healthcare experience in this regard. She had an abortion, and she talked about in very kind of painful ways what led to her decision and how important it was for her own individual autonomy and independence. And that is really what is at stake here. It's about whether or not we believe in gender equity. I think that is really what's on the ballot in addition to reproductive freedom. But at stake, in addition to reproductive freedom, are other essential rights. Because you know that this is just the beginning. Because the right to contraception, the right to birth control, the right to enter a gay marriage, and the fundamental right to privacy, which was really at the heart of the holding or the decision in Roe v. Wade, is under attack. And so now, as Roe rightly pointed, it's up to us to mobilize. You know, well, obviously, the final decision has not been issued, but I think that it's going to come out probably by June, by the end of this term, and in time for us to mobilize for the elections. Up till now, a lot of my colleagues on the other side have cynically supported the overturning of Roe v. Wade because they thought it would never happen. And now they're like the dog that caught the car. And I think we need to make them pay for it. We need to get them the hell out of office if they believe in that. And then we need to elect people on both sides who believe in reproductive freedom. On the other side, for years, they've made this almost a single issue for many elections. And it's time that we do the same on our side. That's what I believe.
Thanks for sharing that. I think with all of these policies, the people who often get hurt the most are the ones who have the least choice. And I think that's what's really sad about so much of what's been happening. Because this issue is also about state versus federal. And I think a lot of people are saying, well, the states can decide. But I think not everyone has the ability to just move to another state just because they don't like the laws. And I think that's something we forget to talk about. Okay, last topic issue before I move on to some personal questions for both of you. As we see increasing globalization, there is more and more pressure to not only speak up about domestic issues, but also international ones, as well as even because of your backgrounds, India issues. How do you balance that? Because you're not living in two countries at the time, at least to my knowledge. So how do you balance those competing pressures and the need to speak up?
Well, Angela, let me just say, I see the room is filled up now with Indian Standard Time. Everyone is here. But I wanted to point out, I see Aziz Hanifa. I don't know, Raja, if it was your case. Aziz used to be writing for India Abroad. And my parents, it didn't matter if I was in the New York Times or anything. It didn't really count unless you were in India Abroad. And Aziz had written about it. And he's got a new platform that I was on the streaming service. So he's one of the great journalists, and just wanted to give him a shout out.
Go Aziz.
I joke around. I have a district that's majority Asian, a significant Indian American population, Pakistani American population, Filipino, Chinese, Japanese, Palestinian, Israeli. I say every global conflict is in my district. And, you can't, as a member of Congress, opine about every single issue in other countries. I mean, the constituents care most about the price of gas. They care about, are they getting their baby formula? They care about good jobs. And that is the primary role of a member of Congress. But what I do is I talk about broader themes that one, America needs to be engaged in the world, not isolated from the world. America needs to stand up for pluralism. We need to stand up for a respect for all faiths. We need to stand up for a respect for human rights. And then I apply that in context of what American advocacy should look like, and that we need an important strategic relationship with India because it's in the United States' interest to lead in the 21st century. And then from that framework, I will take positions. I think one clear place where we all came together was on the vaccines. When we saw that there was a crisis in India and they weren't getting vaccines, I think Raja and I, bluntly, were the only two members of Congress on TV and talking about saying, look, this is not acceptable. We've got to get vaccines. So where there are big issues, where there's clearly in the American interest or humanitarian interest, I definitely speak out. But I don't think it is fair to have an Indian American opine on every single part of Indian politics. In many cases, I have no clue of what people say, what party won in what state. I say, I have no idea. I mean, that's not my job. My job is to represent my district in the United States.
I think that I echo a lot of what Rose said. I also like to tell my good friends on all sides is I think it's perfectly acceptable for you to root for your home teams, but remember that here we are confronting some clear and present dangers that we have to stand shoulder to shoulder against. As long as we can do that, then it's perfectly okay to have these arguments and disagreements and discussions about policies in other countries. I'll just say one shout out, which is obviously this is India's 75th year of independence, and I just saw that The Economist had India on the front cover, and it has a roaring economy right now, and its export industry is doing extremely well, and I like to say its greatest export is you. And I think Indian Americans are probably the greatest kind of vindication of the values that made India special, although I say that just as here in India, I do believe that secular democracy is under pressure. And that's something that we have to fight for everywhere. And having lived through January 6th, Ro and I were in the Capitol, and there was a bomb placed 200 feet from my office window. And I was evacuated 3 times that day. And even today, I cannot watch coverage of January 6th. I turn off the TV. And there's a cop that shows up to my house in the morning once, and then the evening every day because of active threats coming from January 6th. Why? Because you and I, in a lot of people's world vision in this country, believe that we are threats under the Great Replacement Theory. The Great Replacement Theory is that elites in this country, namely Jews and others, are trying to replace white people with non-white people. And so we are squarely in the crosshairs of almost a non-trivial part of this country. So if we are going to be talking about all these other global issues and not talking about what's right and staring us in the face, then we're in trouble. So that's the one message that I try to get across over and over again, because I think that we, having lived through this, know what the stakes are right now for our democracy and Indian Americans as well or better than anyone else.
Thanks for sharing that. I'm going to ask now specific questions related to both of your specialties. I'll start with Representative Khanna. You call yourself a progressive capitalist and have enjoyed support from those in tech, VC, and business. You also wrote a book recently called The Digital Age, which is about decentralizing economic opportunities. For those who haven't read your book, and for those who don't know as well, can you explain in 2 minutes or less, what does it mean to be a progressive capitalist, and what does it mean to decentralize economic opportunities to you?
Well, thanks for the shameless plug on the book. I don't.
Is it on Amazon, bro?
I feel no hesitation now plugging my book, Dignity of Digital Age, after I was with Speaker Pelosi at a Codell, and we were talking. This was at the Munich Security Conference, and the German Chancellor were talking about what's going to happen if Russia invades, and all of a sudden he goes on this tangent of how he wrote this book in 15 years ago about how Germany was going to become a multiracial democracy like America. And he's going on for minutes and minutes until his aide interrupts him and says, see, there you go. He's Chancellor of Germany, still hawking that damn book or something. So now I realize you could always support your book. But look, progressive capitalism is, in my view, is a very simple thing. And that is that you ought to have the education and healthcare and nutrition to be able to succeed. Let me be a little provocative. I often joke with my parents and in-laws. They say, well, we came here with $8 in our pockets. I was like, yeah, and you came here with great degrees and families who really encouraged you. I want that for everyone. You know, I don't think it's that complicated. I believe in the markets and innovation, but it's outrageous that in this country we have people go thousands of dollars in debt to complete their education. It's outrageous that we have people have medical debt to get health care. It's outrageous that we don't invest in preschool education when France has been doing that since 1900. Progressive capitalism means invest in people so they have a shot to have economic prosperity. And the book makes the case that you can't have all the prosperity in my district or in New York. My district has produced more wealth than any place in the world. $11 trillion. When people say socialism, I was like, well, we've produced a lot of wealth. I mean, more wealth than anywhere else. Can't really say it's socialism. But at the same time, you've had the hollowing out, the deindustrialization of so many parts in this country. That's not sustainable. We've got to have economic revitalization in places that have been totally left out, where young kids are leaving those communities, where folks are in their 60s and 70s and saying, what's happened to our town? And they have to have a vision for economic prosperity for the 21st century. And as much as I love the infrastructure bill, just building roads and bridges is not going to bring back those good jobs. We need more. We need a real vision for how we're going to have economic prosperity in these communities.
Representative, well, thank you for that, Representative Khanna. I think that's very critical. I think we've also seen the hollowing out of, like you said, of rural America, which you talk a lot about, and the drug crisis. So, Representative Krishnamurthy, okay, you're in the hot seat. So we're going to ask you a couple of health questions. As you mentioned, you were at the forefront about making sure that there was more vaccine equality during the heart of the COVID pandemic crisis in 2020. We're in 2022, and the crisis really hasn't gone away. What do you think the government or even private companies should be doing today to combat COVID? How do we kind of actually get rid of this pandemic, or do we not? That's the first question. And the second is, hopefully you can represent Pramila Jayapal a little bit here, the heart health bill. When we think about South Asian Americans, there are very specific, heart issues, and we're very predisposed to certain diseases that many people don't talk about or even measure. So I'd love if you could comment on that as well.
Sure. Let me take the second one first, because I do want to plug Pramila's heart health bill. Many of you know, but South Asian Americans, Indian Americans have a 4 times greater likelihood of developing heart disease than others in this country. And that's why I think in all of our families and among our friends, our close friends, we see so many of them suffer heart attacks, other heart ailments at such a young age. And this is something that has to be studied, and it has to be studied rigorously. And this is the gist of Pramila's bill, which is getting marked up in the Energy and Commerce Committee today. So again, when we talk about our own experiences and why it's important for Indian Americans and Desis to be in Congress, this is a prime example. With regard to the first issue about vaccines, so the genesis of this was that 3 of my relatives died of the Delta variant in India back in the April-May timeframe when Delta hit India so hard, and I think everyone in this room was probably touched in some way. It was about as desperate a situation as you'll ever find. And so I basically made it known to the administration that, you know, we've got to basically give our vaccines away to the rest of the world at this point because for 2 reasons. One, it's the morally right thing to do, and it's the smart thing to do. Because as you know, COVID anywhere is a threat to everyone, everywhere. By this point, we know that any variant anywhere in the world is going to make its way here. And we've seen that with the first variant, then Delta, Omicron, and what's next. So I've been pushing this repeatedly with a group of people, including Senator Warren and others. And unfortunately, although it has been a talking point for the administration, it hasn't manifested itself in policy. And so I've been, along with others, basically calling for this as part of every appropriations package at this point, because I think that, look, if we really want to end this pandemic, we need to get the 2.5 billion people who are unvaccinated vaccinated. Otherwise, watch out. We're going to be seeing variant after variant, and God forbid that there's a variant more transmissible or as transmissible as Omicron, the B2 version, and as severe or more severe than the Delta. We can't have a situation where it defeats our vaccines, and we can't ever go back to where we were before. So that's why I'm pressing on this as hard as I can right now, but we need more and more voices doing the same.
Thanks for sharing that. I mean, I just want to ask the audience, because we haven't asked you in a while, like how many of you know folks who have some form of heart disease in your family? Yeah. And then the second question, how many of you know somebody who was affected by the crisis in India when Delta was happening? Yeah. And I think that's been one of the most interesting things to see, I think, in Congress, which is the world is more interconnected than ever before. And because of representation and representatives like you, we are able to see some of these issues come to light. So thank you for your service on that, truly. We're coming to a close. I know this was so amazing to have you both here. I have one final question before we let everyone go. So, as you know, some of people call you the Samosa Caucus. And I really, really need to know, A, do you guys know who came up with this name? And if you...
Roger.
Roger, you came up with this name? Okay, so A, do you actually...
He's got to have some claim to fame. I mean, come on.
So I think people really want to know. So now we know the mystery. You came up with this name. Do you actually like this name? Or if you were to rename it, would you call yourself something different now that it's 2022?
You know, somebody was telling me that, so I've mentioned this a couple of times, and someone was saying, Raja, why not pakora? Then someone else said, why not idli vade?
Or mango.
Or mango. Or then I was in front of a Gujarati community and said, Hama patra. That would really summarize what you are. But the point is, I think I came up with it in January 2017 when we first got, we took the oath of office. And ever since then, I've just basically said we need more samosas in Congress. And we need Congress to look like America. And when it does, it performs better. We obviously joke that we're the Samosa Caucus, or other people call us that, but actually, we're just a group of friends who actually partner on a lot of issues together because of our shared experiences and values.
I think what Roger did, I mean, obviously, I would say got the best sense of humor of the 4 of us. Not a high bar, but
tallest midget.
But the fact is that it's possible, even back in 2017, for us to be so comfortable in our own skin. And that's not to be underestimated. You don't have to hide who you are. And what I say to folks often, I mean, America is becoming more multiracial, more multi-ethnic in spite of itself. You can't stop. I don't care whether you're Donald Trump or Trumpism, you can't stop the expression of diverse traditions, diverse histories, diverse cultures that are oozing out of every part of this country. And, you got a Vietnamese American running for Secretary of State in Georgia. When I was growing up, I don't know, I'm sure with you, our family, we couldn't get an appointment with a staffer to a member of Congress. Now you have 4 Indian Americans. As much as I terribly dislike Dr. Oz, the fact that a Muslim American of Turkish origin is winning the Republican primary in Pennsylvania, I mean, it's the country will get there. And that's, I think, what all of you should take, and what Raja and I and others have been saying, that's the fight. Are we going to become a multiracial, multi-ethnic democracy? And that's why summits like this are so important, because your activism, your involvement will help us get there faster.
Okay, is there anything else you'd like to leave the audience with before we let you go?
No, do you?
The only thing I would say is today, as you leave this summit, I think that it's really important to remember 3 things that you do. 1, we have to vote. We don't vote in our numbers nearly enough. And I've looked at the polling on this so many times, even in my own constituency, which has a huge Indian American and Desi segment, that we talk politics, but we don't do politics. So and the second thing is, you all know this in your bones, we got to work on causes bigger than us, even in the political sphere. I think everybody in our communities has become very philanthropic and charitable, and they prioritize the mandir and the temple and the mosque and the church and so forth. But let's think about the political causes that we're going to rally around, whatever it is. And then third, it's time to run for office. We've said this before, Ro and I, and Ami and Pramila, but I think it's really time to think about how do you cultivate people within your own friend circle, within your own family, or yourself. And start thinking, how do you run for the right office, and where is it going to be, and so forth. And what are you going to do? Remember, you can run for Congress, but not in my congressional district. But anyway, I just want to say thank you for your time.
Thanks so much, Jim. Should we do a photo?
Thank you so much.
I'm now going to hand it over to Neil. So thank you so much, Neil.
Please, everyone, give another round of applause to Snigdha for moderating and to our members of Congress. Before we break out, I just want to make a quick announcement. You'll get a chance to see Raja and Ro tonight as well, but thank you all for being here. It's really wonderful to see so many leaders from around the country. We're going to break out. The climate panel is going to be on the first floor, and then we're going to have a number of other panels. You got to walk up the stairs to the elevator to go upstairs. We're going to come back here for lunch. You're going to hear from Minnie Timaraju, who's the president of NARAL, one of our founding board members at the Impact Project, and a panel of senior officials in the White House on a Women Who Lead panel. And I'm excited to have you all back for the reception as well. That's going to be outside here. And if you have any questions about the gala, if you haven't signed up, please just ask our staff. But I also want to thank a couple of people. And just tell you, if you really liked what you heard from the members that are here right now, part of what Impact does is elevate those issues that they're working on. So when Raja was working on the NOVID Act, we helped create that bill, push it out there, and disseminate it. And our goal is to reach not just the people in this room, but the 5 million South Asians across the country. So you'll get your photos. I promise. if we'll meet the members out in the back, but if I can just thank a couple more people. Deepak Raj, Deepak. Hey Deepak, can you guys get? I don't know. You can't hear me very well. But in terms of our sponsors, Deepak and Neera Raj have been incredible. Narendra Malani, who's right here, Narendra Anita Malani has been an incredible supporter of Impact. Raj and Kamla Gupta have been incredible supporters of Impact. Please give them a round of applause. And Hemant and Indrani Goradia, also in our founder circle as well. Raj, please just please everyone give them a round of applause. And then our corporate sponsors are MasterCard, Comcast, the Gates, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, as well as Left Hook and Emily's List. So thank you all for your support. We'll see you back here at lunch. Please let us know if you have any questions about the panels. Our staff is out here, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.